Hello, everyone. My name is Dylan Rose from Flywater Travel and based here in Ashland, Oregon. And I'm chatting today with Craig Hayes, who is the owner and operator of Turneffe Flats Lodge in Belize, one of our longtime partners in the travel industry and one of our favorite, certainly, operations in the world. And we're just sitting down today to talk a little bit about what we've kind of both been through and with COVID and the reopening of Belize coming up and Craig's role in that. And then also the future of travel to both Turneffe Flats Lodge and Belize and kind of getting mutually excited about that coming up here on August 15th. And so we were going to have this conversation and thought it would be nice to record it and then also make it available to the community at large so they can have some good information as well. So thanks a lot, Craig, for joining us. It's great to talk with you as always, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Well, thanks, Dylan, and thanks for the nice introduction. We certainly appreciate working with Flywater and enjoy that a lot, and appreciate all the assistance you've given us over the years.
Absolutely. Goes both ways for sure. We've got a great longtime partnership, and it's fantastic that hopefully we can see some light at the end of this COVID tunnel a little bit with at least getting some people back to Belize. And before we get into all that, I thought it'd be good just to talk a little bit about your history and gosh, I guess you go back now 40 years plus in Belize and the Turneffe Atoll, and I think it'd be great to get a little bit of that background from you and a little bit of the history of the lodge and your experience. And certainly there's a lot to cover there, but if you could give us just a brief account of kind of how this all got started for you and a little bit of the history, I think that'd be great.
Well, time flies, as they say, and
Yeah.
It seems like just yesterday we were kids in our 20s visiting Belize on vacation, and some friends and I decided to be funded to develop a business in Belize, and we thought someday tourism was going to take off in Belize, so we decided to look into tourism, and we heard about this faraway place, Turneffe, that was sort of the magical spot for bone fishing and lobster fishing. And after a couple of tries, we talked a Belizean friend into taking us to Turneffe, and made a deal with him. He had a fish camp where Turneffe Flats is now situated, and we made a deal with him and decided to start a fishing lodge. And we knew absolutely nothing about doing that. It was a fluke. I'm not sure we still know much about it, but we've learned quite a lot along the way. It's been an evolution, and it's been a lot of fun. Certainly interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my first time to Turneffe, boy, I was just blown away at the pristine quality of that resource and the atoll in general, and just how it seems so much kind of different from the mainland Belize. And as you kind of cross the sea and get out to the atoll, it's just stunningly beautiful, and the coral and hard bottom for wading, and just so much to offer the traveling angler. And is that kind of what drew you to the atoll and in general? And when you were out there, what are some of the things that you saw that just really drew you to that place and caused you to really fall in love with it?
Well, I mean, Turneffe is just, as you say, is a magical place. It's incredible, and fortunately, it hasn't changed much since the first time we went. It's been far enough away that it's avoided a lot of the overdevelopment and congestion that the rest of Belize and most other coastal areas have. Belize is the largest and most biologically diverse coral atoll in our whole hemisphere. So it really is a magical place. fishing is incredible, but there's so much more to it. We've committed to not only trying to run a fishing lodge as best we can, but also to try and preserve Turneffe and make sure that it stays a special place.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know you've done some really great work on the conservation side, and have dedicated a lot to that. And I'd like to certainly talk about that here in a little bit. Um, what are, in terms of the background of the lodge, how big is it, and how many people do you have working for the operation? And maybe you could give us just a little bit of the kind of nuts and bolts of your fishery as well, so just to give some people the idea in case they're not familiar.
Sure, sure. We're relatively small. We have 9 fishing skiffs, so we can fish maximum of 18 guests at a time. We also do scuba diving. We have a high quality scuba diving program, and I think Turneffe is really special for somebody that wants to do both scuba diving and fly fishing, saltwater fly fishing. I don't think there's any place better in the world to do that combination. And then in addition, we've added a Atoll adventure program, which is centered around snorkeling, but it's very educational, a variety of other eco tours, birding, tours for manatees and dolphins, and our guide is a real naturalist, and it's really a fun program. That's great for couples. So our lodge, we take up to 28 people maximum, and have tried to provide as high quality a service as we can. Our motto is pampered in paradise, and so I think that's kind of been our mission to mesh with the environment here as best we can, and provide top quality service at the same time.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know, speaking for my experience and all the clients that we send there, I mean, I think you're right. The ability for you guys to be able to deliver a great experience to a really keen fly fishing angler, and then also a couple or a family, or even those that just want to come out and do some eco touring, you combine it in a really great way out there that is a really high value proposition for really any interest, and anybody who wants to fish or snorkel or eco adventure or just see a beautiful place and relax. And I think that's one of the things that we see in it that does so well with our clientele, and just makes it such a special location. You know, one of the things I see in this job as I travel around is I get a glimpse of all the lodges that I work with, of just the immense challenges that that come up for folks such as yourself that are trying to operate in such a remote area, and whether it be supply runs or be it hurricanes or storms or bureaucracy or things like that. How have you managed all that? I mean, I guess, and is it something that, I mean, that is that some of those things, the biggest kind of challenges, say before COVID, that come up for you as an operator in a remote location like this?
Well, as I get asked that question a lot, and my kind of my pat answer is we've gotten pretty good at it, because there isn't any mistake we haven't made at least twice, and so it's been a real trial and error thing. It's been a evolution, as I said before, and I think we've gotten good at it. There's no rule book. You have to kind of figure it out as you go, and that's that's frankly been one of the really fun things about running Turneffe Flats. When things come up, it can be aggravating from time to time, but it's certainly never boring. And that's that. Life is interesting, and that's something to be thankful for. Just to put things in perspective, I should mention that Turneffe is a big place. It's about 30 miles long and 10 miles wide. So, we're often the only fishing people on the atoll, and spread out over 350 square miles. So,
Yeah, it's the second largest atoll in the world. Is that right? Next to Christmas Island. Is that stat accurate from what you know?
well, most of the atolls in the world are volcanic, particularly in the Pacific. Turneffe is different. It's not a volcanic atoll. Was was formed related to tectonic upwellings, and so it's a non-coral. It's called a coral atoll rather than a volcanic atoll. So Turneffe is the largest coral atoll in the Caribbean. I think there are other larger atolls in the Pacific, but they're volcanic.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I wasn't aware of that distinction. Oh, that's cool. And what are some of the main fisheries? Obviously, I'm familiar with them, having been there and working with you guys every day on bookings. But for those that aren't as aware, maybe you could just take us through quick glimpse of your seasonality and the fish that you guys are chasing and the species that you have available out there.
Sure, sure. Well, bone fishing has been the mainstay of our fishing for decades, and I think, well, I know Turneffe has by far the best bone fishing in Belize anyway. One of the significant things about our bone fishing is that we stopped the netting here at Turneffe back in the in the early '80s, and so what we've seen is the bonefish have gotten bigger and bigger, and clearly much bigger than they used to be. So it used to be we'd see only small fish, and now we're seeing regularly 8 to 10 pound fish, and it's not unusual to be landing double-digit bonefish now. That never happened 20 years ago. So that's been a big change. Permit fishing, as many people come here to fish permit now as bonefish. And we have a great permit fishery. Um, you can debate who's got the best permit fishery in Belize. There's a lot of good ones, but Turneffe has a great permit fishery. And a lot of people come now and just target permit. Tarpon is our only seasonal fishing. We have some resident tarpon around all the time. But the migratory season is spring and summer. We have the big migratory tarpon around then. So it's really a grand slam place, particularly during tarpon season. And then in addition to that, snook fishing seems to be getting better and better as there's been less commercial pressure on the snook. And so we have a pretty good snook fishery. Of course, barracuda. We're kind of developing a triggerfish fishery too. We've had triggerfish here forever, but they've been ignored. And
I love triggerfish. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, they're
And
fantastic.
some of the Pacific concentration on triggerfish has prompted an interest in that. So it's a real varied fishery.
Oh, that's great. The triggers mostly on the outside edge towards the ocean side, or do you find them in the inside as well?
They're almost always in the surf on the outside,
Yeah,
on the seaward side.
right. No, that's
Sometimes
cool.
they'll mosey across the flat, but most often we see them right up in the surf.
Yeah. I've got my most experience with those at Christmas Island, and at least there, they can be, really finicky and a challenge. You've got to kind of feed them just right, and there's a lot of learned specialty skills involved with them, at least out there. Do you guys see them kind of in that way, being a little bit finicky and just different overall than it is chasing bonefish, let's say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you almost have to put a fly just 2 inches in front of them.
Yeah.
It's very hard to feed them.
Yeah, they're a challenge, and and really just a fun, different kind of presentation style as well. And
Mhm.
I'm looking forward to checking that out next time I'm down there for sure. Well, one of the cool things about the fishery, I always tell people, is that, you know, with all the folks that we send you, I think that probably we see a good portion of our first permit catches for anglers at your location. It's one of the things that seems to come up where anglers maybe who've had a lot of challenges and difficulty with permit can go to Turneffe and access some of the fish that may school a little bit more towards the interior side of the lagoon. And it seems like we've been seeing a great number of people catch their first permit with some of those fish on the inside of the lagoon that may be slightly smaller, but school up and can get real aggressive. Is that something that you guys see?
Yeah, we kind of have two different uh, permit fisheries almost. We have the what you're speaking of, the fish that tend to travel in schools. They're not necessarily small. They can be big. A lot of them are big fish as well, and they're not as finicky, and people can get multiple shots at them, and it's a little easier uh, to catch a permit. They're still finicky. It's still not easy, but it's easier. And then we have the classic hunting for permit, and so we really encourage people to do both. You know, if they
Right.
want to try the schools, that's fine, but really the magic is the hunting. And
Yeah, it seems like you've got that outside edge fish that's kind of a different fish. It's almost like a bigger pelagic type of permit that may come off right off of the ocean and feed on your ocean facing flats. And then you've got the interior fishery that may be more oriented towards schooling fish. But the duality is really interesting to me when I've been there. It's you know, you can go on the outside and look for potentially a big solo or bigger fish, but then also hunt for schools as well.
yeah, it's a nice combination. I'm not sure they're not the same fish. You know, I think they're inside sometimes and outside sometimes.
Right.
I don't. We can't say that for sure, but that's what we think.
Right. Now that's interesting. And your tarpon fishery, is that primarily more in the summer months? Does that get started at kind of as you ease into summer, or do you see them in the spring as well?
Yeah, as early as early March or early April, late March, we start seeing migratory fish. It really, like every migration varies a little bit from year to year. But some years we'll have uh, migratory fish in late March. Sometimes it goes well into October, but the peak months are June, July, and August. So it used to be that our fishing season was pretty much done in May, but people have caught on that really the grand slam months, the peak fishing months are summer months, and so our June, July, and August have gotten very busy, very full.
Yeah, that's just a really underrated season, I think, really across the Caribbean. From what I see, there's so much potential there, and anglers do get concerned about heat and get concerned about weather and things like that in the summer months. But boy, if you can kind of reframe those older ideologies about, it being adverse weather all the time or being too hot, I mean, you can really take advantage of some fantastic fishing and great opportunities in the summer, and that's something I've seen for sure.
Summer is amazingly comfortable here. It's
Yeah,
much more comfortable than the southern U.S. and uh,
absolutely.
and actually April and May can be our hottest spells. Uh,
Oh, right.
summer is very nice.
And what are you guys seeing from the snook fishery? You mentioned that earlier, and it kind of perked my interest because it's something I've always been keen on doing. And I haven't seen a snook, I don't think, in the 2 trips I've made out your way. But what are you seeing from the snook fishery in terms of seasonality and how anglers are chasing them there?
It's really not seasonal at all. We see snook throughout the year. They tend to be in spots where the guides know where where they are, and right along the mangroves or underneath the mangroves in certain areas, and so it's really a nice addition. It's not the kind of thing you'd come Turneffe to just target snook, but it sure is a nice add-on to the other fisheries.
Yeah, absolutely. They're great. I just love chasing them, and I assume, can you do some blind casting for them as well, where you're kind of poking flies underneath the mangroves and edges and things like that?
Oh, sure, yeah, sure. You know, especially in areas where they know they see snook, if they don't see one uh, out that they can target, then they'll do some blind casting and see if they can pull one out from underneath the mangroves.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's just getting me excited to go back. That's for sure. It's been too long since I've seen you guys down there, and I need to go do that. And all that fishing talk certainly gets me excited. Clearly, as we are all keenly aware these days, we're dealing with a pretty substantial crisis, and it's thrown certainly the travel industry. I know the greater travel industry for a loop. I suppose you guys as well. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you today is about the reopening and about, kind of your role in that, and some of the things that you guys faced with the virus and the closure. And I've had a lot of clients ask me about, hey, how are they doing? They develop bonds with the guides and staff, and certainly yourself and Karen, and ask us how are things going down there. And so I think maybe that's, as we segue into talking about that, how is everybody doing, and how have you kind of been handling the closure, and how's the staff doing, and what is kind of the current status given the role of the virus these days?
Well, as you say, Dallin, it's been a difficult time for the travel industry. It's been, frankly, a difficult time for everybody, and we all recognize that, and sympathize with people that have it a lot worse than we do. But when Belize closed down, I think it was March 23rd. We sort of decided to concentrate on three things. First, we decided to support our excellent staff and keep them working. At that time, it was sort of indefinitely. It's actually been longer than anybody thought, but we didn't know at that point. But so we've kept our staff employed and working throughout. Um, and secondly, we tried to do everything we could for our guests who had to be rescheduled or canceled. We we altered our our policies to do what we could within the parameters of not going broke doing it, and I think we've been successful with that for the most part. And then thirdly, we said we might as well make something good of this. So what can we do positive throughout this shutdown? And so we've taken on a number of projects, and hopefully we'll come through this with some positive results and something to feel good about. We just thought that was important as well. So we've done a couple of building projects. We've expanded our water and solar system. We've developed a whole new menu, which has been fun.
Wow.
And and uh, and and the other thing we've been doing is working on a Gillnet ban. We had started that long before, and hopefully we're going to have some positive news very soon about that. I was just working on that this morning. So our staff is in good shape. They're all anxious to get back to work. Um, and we can talk about what that's going to involve if you like.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that would be great. And yeah, one of the interesting things about Belize is that, especially as you look at the United States, Belize has managed to keep cases very low, and it really seems like addressed the influx of the virus in a quick way and a pretty positive way. What's the status of the virus in Belize these days? Or from what I know, there don't appear to be many cases or much spread at all. Is that still true?
Yeah, Belize has done a really an excellent job of dealing with COVID-19. There has been no community spread. There have been a few erratic cases related primarily to people that have been repatriated. For instance, employees from cruise ships, they were quarantined when they got back, tested, and only released uh, when they had tested negative. There have been a few border jumpers from Guatemala and Mexico that have tested positive, but essentially there's no active COVID-19 in Belize. There really hasn't been. I think that Prime Minister Barrow and the health department and the government of Belize have done really a wonderful job of dealing with COVID-19, and now they've set in place protocols for reopening on August 15th. And we've talked about this, but I've been fortunate enough to be involved with that, with background in medicine as well as tourism. I kind of had a foot in both key areas, and so I was um, lucky enough to be involved with the protocols, and I think they've set up really good protocols to make Belize one of the safest place, if not the safest place, to go fishing anywhere in the world. Um, and we can go through all those things if you'd like, but
Sure, sure.
it
Well,
basically involves three things.
yeah, I think we should say too, and you mentioned this already, but one of the things that gave me the idea to record this conversation and put it out there was that you do have a background in medicine as an MD, and I don't know that there's other folks that are in our industry that can combine that background with a multi-decades long lodge operation as well. And so you're just in a really unique position to talk about the virus with your background and also being a lodge owner, and then also being instrumental in developing a plan to get the country reopened for tourism. And so it's one of the things I really want to get to, and that I find really interesting. And yeah, I'd be interested to hear just that process of reopening and how you started to work with the Prime Minister of Belize to develop this plan, and kind of what that process has been like.
Well, I think that they went through a really rigorous analysis of what everybody else was doing, what testing was available, what parameters need to be put in place, and took their time doing it. Really did it in a scientific way, and looking at for instance, some other places that have recently reopened before Belize are now looking at shutting back down, and what they did in comparison to Belize is I think reflective of what Belize taking their time and doing it right, and so basically their reopening requires three things. First, a testing program that everybody has to get a test within 72 hours of leaving for Belize, or be tested when they get to Belize. Secondly, everybody has to download a tracing app so that while you're in Belize, the health department can know where everybody's at. If somebody does turn up positive, that helps a great deal with all of their contact tracing and everything they need to make sure it's not a problem. And then thirdly, the tourist board is required that people that are going to reopen, and by the way, guests can only come to certain lodges that have gone through this process, They have to meet what they call gold standards, and they're very rigorous set of standards for cleaning, desanitizing, making sure that everybody is safe. And so it's that combination of protocols, I think, that's really, I think, the best I've seen looking at all of them, and part of what makes Belize one of the safest places, I think, in the world to go fishing right now.
Yeah, it really is interesting with the lack of cases, and then a really robust, dedicated plan that Belize could really, end up being one of those first kind of go-to zones where somebody can go and feel safe and feel like they can have a great experience, even amid dealing with the virus. And you mentioned the testing. It's one of the things I'm still struggling with, admittedly, and we have a lot of clients asking us about. Um, and I guess my question is, with the distinction between getting tested 72 hours in advance of your arrival or having a negative result 72 hours in advance. A lot of our clientele who are required to get tested before they travel are running into issues where they're trying to figure out, do I need to actually get a test done physically on me within 3 days of arrival, or do I just need the result back in that time? Can you take us through, and you've mentioned this to me a little bit, can you just take me through what you would consider a proposed timeline from actually, going to your doctor, getting a physical test, and then getting your result, and then showing up in Belize, and kind of what that exactly entails?
Sure, sure. There's been a little confusion, but it's 72 hours before the beginning of your travel. So if your flight is at 11 o'clock on Saturday, it's 72 hours before that is you have to have a test done within that time frame.
Okay,
72 hours before you leave.
so you'd actually get the nose swab 72 hours before you depart on your plane. Is that true?
Yes, and that's the key question there is it's not 72 hours before you arrive, it's 72 hours before you depart. That's a
Okay.
big difference because lots of people can take more than a day to get to Belize.
Right.
So that's
So,
important.
so we're really going to need to counsel people that they're going to need to get tested 72 hours before they depart, but also get the result back, correct? And so for folks that are in parts of the country where maybe it's tougher to get a speedier result, they're really going to need to pay attention to that timeline and get the test, but then also confirm that they can get a result back within the proper amount of time before they depart. Is that right?
Right, they have to arrive in Belize with the test result. It doesn't have to be, it can be emailed to you. In fact, it needs to be downloaded onto your app that I mentioned earlier. So the key thing is you want to get tested as close to the 72-hour window as possible to give yourself that full 72 hours to get a test result back.
Okay.
Everybody knows that there's problems getting test results back in the United States these days, particularly in certain areas. We have identified some labs that we're working with that will, without going into all the details, we can guarantee that kind of turn, or they will guarantee that kind of turnaround. You have to plan ahead. You can't just wait until 72 hours and then just go someplace and try to get a test. You really need to plan ahead. And we're recommending that everybody get their test ahead of time, not wait till they get to Belize and be tested in Belize. That's just a fallback. But of our clients, we're recommending that they all get tested ahead of time.
Yeah, I think that's important. And from the folks that I'm talking to that are getting ready to travel to see you guys, I'm saying, hey, if it was me, I wouldn't get on the plane until I had that negative test result, and so we'll be working with them to really, get their timeline understood and make sure that they know how it works and have all the details related to that. Do you think that people should start with this process of getting the test with their doctor? Or do you think that they should look into just going to like a community medical immediate care type place, or just go online and use Pixel or one of the other laboratories that are available online? Where do folks start to get the process going to take their test?
Well, I would first go to your family doctor, or your whatever your medical, yeah, your family doctor, um, and see what they have available. See if they can guarantee, if they have access to testing, and can guarantee that turnaround. Um, if you have, you want to make sure you have some arrangement, that you have some connection to do that. If you're not comfortable with that, then I wouldn't just go online. We have made some contacts with people, with labs that we've sort of vetted and that we're comfortable with. And if I thought you had that information, but if not, Dylan, I'll make sure you get it so that you can pass that on to all of your clients as well.
Absolutely, yeah, we'll do that.
But there are good options for getting that done, I think, if you plan ahead.
Okay, excellent, excellent. And you mentioned the app as well. I'm not familiar too much with the app setup. And is that something that you load before you get on your plane to travel to Belize? And then what does it do? Does it track your location, or what's its function, I guess, in the reopening plan?
The app will be required when you get to the airport. You'll have to have downloaded that before you leave. It will have a questionnaire that you'll need to fill out, a health screening questionnaire. So that'll facilitate doing that before you get to Belize. It'll have a place where you can download your test results, and it will have a tracing function while in Belize. It won't trace you before you get to Belize. You can take it off your device when you're done, but it will trace you when you're in Belize. And that I understand that some people may consider that an infringement, but I think it's just something we're going to have to put up with right now. The health department understandably needs to know where anybody that becomes symptomatic while they're in Belize has been and who they've had contact with. That's just really important for controlling things in Belize. Have to understand Belize has no COVID. They're very reluctant to open without measures that make sure that their citizens remain safe. That's more than understandable. And also that's what will make tourists and visitors safe as well. So it is a little bit of a privacy infringement, but I think a small price to pay for what we need right now.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, I mean, it's obviously a big challenge for us and a lot of folks, and how certain aspects of the virus has political aspects and things that have come into it. And to that end, what are there rules from Belize regarding masks and transfers and conditions at the lodge and things like that? Can you speak to anything like that to let guests know what they'll encounter mask wise as they embark on a trip?
Sure. Masks are required in Belize. You'll have to have a mask when you leave the plane. I believe they're required on the plane as well. I'm almost certain of that. And if you arrive and you have your test and your app, you'll be channeled into a fast track lane. You'll show your test results. You go get your bag, and you'll just go right on through like it was pre-COVID. If you don't have your test, then you'll have to go to a waiting room and have your test done and wait for that. But like I said, we're going to try to be certain that everybody has a test result, and so they go through the fast track lane. But Belize has had a mask requirement since March, which has been widely followed. And Every place you go into has hand sanitizer you have to use, and so I think that's part of why they've done so well. And those are what you should expect when you come here. In order to be gold certified um, and be able to accept tourists, we are having to go through rigorous standards. We had to submit a 90-page uh, document application about every detail of our of our pro.
Hi, Craig. I'm sorry we lost you there, and you were just saying how you had to submit a 90-page proposal for reopening. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, it's the application for the what's called the gold standard and resort, and so in order to reopen, people have to meet these standards. So they include what goes on from the time we meet people at the airport, how the van is clean, um, our boat transfers, our dining, our guest rooms, how they're cleaned, desanitized, what goes on in the fishing skip. So there's parameters and protocols for all of that. And they're pretty rigorous. We're going to try to make it as comfortable as possible, but people will definitely notice a difference, and there'll be lots of safety measures in place. Um, for instance, we will offer different options for dining. Our dining room is socially distanced. Groups that know each other or families will, of course, dine together. But people that are not in a group or with each other will have the option to be off by themselves eating. Uh, we'll offer in-room dining if people want to feel more comfortable doing that. So it's going to be very flexible as far as what's needed to make people safe and comfortable.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and it's as I mentioned earlier, it's just I think for folks that are listening to this, it should come to some fortunate realization that your background is kind of perfectly suited for this as an MD and a longtime lodge opener, and we're all really pulling for Belize to have a successful reopening and Turneffe. And as we mentioned, August 15th is the date. Can clients book flights? I imagine they can book flights right now, no problem, to come to Belize after that date. People are doing that right now, or are flights still an issue, or what have you seen from that end? Hey, Craig, we were just talking about flights and what you're seeing on that end as we look to reopening on August 15th. What are you seeing there?
Flights are not as available as they were, and the number of flights will ramp up over time. I think that Delta doesn't start flying until September, for instance, and so we've had some problems getting people from Atlanta. But there are flights available. They will ramp up as time goes on over the next month or so.
Okay, great. Um, well, that's great. And in terms of if folks are getting interested in coming down to see you guys, and what's your availability like throughout the summer and fall? Is there still space for folks if they wanted to jump on a trip? What are the openings look like right now?
Um, we have openings throughout. We've rebooked a lot of people that had booked during peak season that have been rebooked and starting when we open. So we're going to be somewhat busy, but we have space all the way through. We can definitely get people in. Obviously, people are hesitant about traveling, um, hesitant to get on a plane, hesitant about where they're going. And so I think we really need to get the message out that this can be done safely. We're making every effort to ensure that all safety measures are taken, and hopefully people will get more comfortable as they see this happen, and new bookings will pick up. We are getting some new bookings, but we have plenty of room for that to pick up.
Great. Yeah, that's good. Well, great. It's super good information. And I guess I'd be remiss to not ask you. You mentioned this a little bit earlier about the gillnets, and I think your work with the Turneffe Atoll Trust is really interesting. And maybe you could talk about the Gillnet initiative and the Turneffe Atoll Trust and some of your work on the conservation end, and just kind of give us a brief background and a bit of an update there.
Sure, Dallin. Yeah, these days I spend the majority of my time on our conservation efforts, and one of our big pushes right now is this gillnet issue, and we're actually just this morning I'm working on details with the Minister of Fisheries and donors to try to finalize an agreement to get gillnets banned in Belize. This would be throughout Belize, and it would be a huge, huge advantage or huge success for Belize from one end to the other. And so we've been working on this for a couple of years, and it's very close to getting done. If we come through this COVID period with that done, I'll be very happy. The other big thing going on is literally right before COVID happened, we finalized the deal to buy all of the remaining land at Turneffe, 17,000 acres, for a land trust.
Wow.
And so all of the remaining national land at Turneffe is now in a land trust. It's owned by the people of Belize, but it's perpetually protected and can't be developed or changed. It has to remain in its natural state. So that's been our other big push this past year.
No, that is fantastic, and yeah, super exciting. And what have been some of the big challenges with I mean, there must be numerous, but what have been some of the big hurdles you've overcome with the Gillnet initiative thus far?
Well, the government has rightfully been concerned about the Gillnet users and what's going to happen to them. So the deal basically is we've raised $1 million Belize through a coalition that we've formed of interested people. That also involves
Technology. Can you? You were just saying that you'd raised $1 million, Belize. Can you start back from there regarding the Gillnets?
We raised $1 million, and a company named a nonprofit named Oceana has raised money as well, and that money is to be used to transition gillnet fishermen from gillnetting to other ways of making a living. And once the gillnet fishermen are transitioned, once they've had a program put in place. Okay. Well,
go ahead.
We formed a coalition of people interested in banning gillnets, and we've raised over $1 million. Oceana, an NGO in Belize, has raised some other money, and together that money will be used to fund the transition of gillnet fishermen from gill netting to other economic activities. And once that transition is complete, the gill net ban will go into place. It's pretty straightforward.
Oh, fantastic. And if folks wanted to learn more about that and what you have going on there, or contribute, is there a place they can do that?
Yeah, there's a website called which is very comprehensive, called bangillnets.com, and there's a GoFundMe for that. We still are a little bit short on money, and that would be appreciated.
Absolutely. And glad to get that in there. And then how about the Turneffe Atoll Trust? Is there a place folks can go to learn more about the work being done there?
We have a website as well. It's not as updated as it should be, like a lot of websites, but it's called turneffeatoll.org is our website. Or you can give us a call anytime.
Great, great. And of course, yeah, folks can find out more at the Turneffe Flats website as well about the lodge. Is that tflats.com?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
tflats.com. And well, that's great, Craig. I really want to thank you for your time and sitting down and chatting with me and putting out this super valuable information for people that are interested in traveling right now and what's been involved with your story and your mission to kind of reopen. And I just want to thank you for your time and also the relationship that we've had over the many years of working together. I've really appreciated working with you and your staff, and I'm really hopeful that this deadline comes and you guys can get going and folks can travel and feel safe, and I just wish you all the best with that, and we'll be watching closely.
Well, thanks so much, Dylan. This was fun and hopefully worthwhile, and we look forward to working with you for a long time.
That sounds great, Craig. I appreciate it. We'll keep in touch. Give my best to everyone down there, and we'll stay in touch.
Okay, thanks, Dylan.
Okay, take care.
Take care.